Welcome. This is MoneyHeart, where we explore the emotional side of money. I'm Camille Diaz, and today we're discussing leaving legacies, not liabilities. My guest is Kimberly Tromatore. She is a licensed financial educator who teaches individuals what's not taught in school. Kimberly, welcome to MoneyHeart.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so glad that you are here. This is a story that's like near and dear to your heart, this concept of leaving legacies rather than liabilities. And not only is it what you teach people how to do, but you actually have personal experience in this area that kind of drives you. I would love to just jump right into your story, which is generational, starting with your grandmother. Kind of tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, as we've spoken about, I tend to always say no disrespect to my family, but the family leaves liabilities, right? And so, as millions and millions of us around the world, that happens. That's more so the norm than not. And so, the focus for me is that legacy piece. So, as you mentioned, moving away from liabilities into a legacy. And, part of my justification, my why, the passion behind what I do is, I've gone through different scenarios of not having legacies, but, the potential was there, or, just the communication or the education, I should say, wasn't there from a financial literacy perspective. So yeah, in 2018, my grandmother, who I adored, who I was, very, very close to. She was more like the mother figure. She married very young, had grandkids very young. So I lost her and her daughter, my mother, 3 months apart. And
Oh my gosh.
we won't get into the mental health aspects of that.
Sure.
But yeah, very, I always admired my grandmother, brilliant woman who only had a 5th grade education. My family, depending on what side, but most immigrated from Italy. They were strawberry farmers and crops, and, their entire life and their focus was farming. And so, yeah, she got pulled out to help on the farm, essentially, right? But she was so savvy of a mindset when it came to money. So not only did she help my grandfather, married, 50 plus 60 years before he passed away, he was a barber. So not only did she help with his business, he and 3 of his brothers were all together in a barber shop for decades within their community. But she also managed their books, right? And paid all the bills and the checks, and kind of that, which you would think from like a gender norm was more so the male, right? And I hate to use that, but that was typical then. And so she had that male focus of that, again, that financial mindset. They had rental properties, they had no debt, they were very fiscally conservative, even to the point where my mom would say, listen, it's ridiculous. Like, we didn't take vacations as kids because they were focused on building up that nest egg, leaving a legacy, having, options for retirement. I'm from New Orleans, so their vacation really consisted of just the Gulf Coast. So just Mississippi, the beach, which isn't the greatest beach to begin with, but so it was no Disneyland opportunities. And so, yeah, it's a long story, if you will, but my grandfather ended up with Alzheimer's. Not only was he diagnosed, but then she was caring for her own mother who also had it. So he was probably about 12 or so years. It could have potentially been longer. We just went probably a few years not being diagnosed because we were so focused on, my great grandmother. And we had to move her out of her apartment and things like that. But financially, as you know, the cost of long-term care, the cost of home health care, the cost of personal assistance, she did everything she could to keep Papa at home. But then also, from a mental perspective, from a physical perspective, she was also visiting her own mom every day, doing meals, doing, groceries, everything there. It just became, too much to handle. So not only did she was able to keep financially the one rental property. But then from a savings perspective, because going from having CDs again and having all these kind of awesome, investments in that generational wealth perspective coming from, home ownership to having to spend it all and lose it all essentially. Right. And so then when my grandfather needed kind of round the clock care and things like that, and they didn't really have a technical long-term care policy, that would have definitely assisted with that. So she ended up having to lose her home, and then became in more financial distress as she assisted with her brother, and just made some bad decisions along the lines of co-signing for him for really luxury cars and things of this nature. So while we lost from a financial perspective too, we lost our home. My parents filed bankruptcy. So again, coming from that place of possibly not having 3 meals a day, right? Having a private education and beyond privileged for that, but that education was assisted and paid for by both grandparents and sets of grandparents. But while I was in high school, we did lose our house. So my grandparents put down 40 or 50,000 to buy back the house, right? And so I was 16, so I wouldn't have to change districts and schools and all that jazz. So, and that would have been my mother's literal inheritance. My grandmother, again, passes away in 2018. At that point, she had only qualified for, an insanely expensive, due to age and so forth, life insurance policy. So from a generational wealth, again, her 4 grandchildren, her daughter, there was really nothing there. The policy essentially paid for, transitioning and getting, from Virginia to Louisiana, and the burial, services and things of that nature. But it's so disheartening, right? Because I'd spent my life growing up and I was so blessed to have her for 40 years, literally. But to see, every time it was kind of one of those like grandparents, when she dropped me a $10 bill, or, drop me off at home and here's $20, or what can we pay, what can we do for you, and to kind of be like rich in that sense, right? And to not have those debts in place, and just really savvy when it came to money. To at her end, we as a family struggled to support what she needed.
Right. So, and I didn't even know about your great grandmother. So you got your grandmother trying to take care of both her husband and her mother at the same time. And then that kind of eating up into their savings. Then your dad is trying to take care of his mother and his wife at the same time, again, using up whatever's left of the money. Yeah, that's definitely really difficult. And especially to watch your grandmother go from being super financially savvy, having savings, running businesses, all that kind of stuff, always giving you a little money, a little spending money, extra stuff, which is super cool, to barely having enough money for final expenses. That's a huge shift that was really just caused by natural illness, like the just regular aging type of stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, luckily, she did, she passed away in her 80s. I'd have to go back. Was that, yeah, in her 80s. And so just thinking about that length of time, right? Because again, my grandfather, about 12 years or so, and I'm blanking on my great grandmother, I think about 8, but that Alzheimer's, it's such a long, lengthy process, unfortunately. And, financially, mentally, again, physically, I mean, she was doing the lifting. Of course, again, we brought in staff and assistants. And at one point, she would reach out to her local church, and hire people, kind of just needing extra income, but not really certified, didn't have that home health experience, or like a nursing staff, things like that. But more so for years, it was kind of like, hey, he just needs a buddy, to be at home, to kind of be mindful of his actions, and his mindset. Definitely he served in a war as a medic, because he was a barber. So his mindset was so focused on, especially those last several years of just World War II. So really the person just sat there and had to listen to his and engage with his stories. But yeah, financially, and it's, then she relocated to Virginia. So my aunt, her other daughter, they were very close. And, she went from at one point living in a really nice high rise, beautiful retirement community. But yeah, after X time, I don't know, maybe 2 years in, hey, I can't really afford $6K a month for the retirement community, or $5K, whatever it was. Because it was more that luxury style, even though, definitely wasn't by any means. And then, lived with my aunt for years, kind of had that mother-in-law, mothers, whatever they call it, quarters. So Granny was typically upstairs, had her own little studio, what have you, and worked really well. But then again, thinking about that end of life, and preparing, and luckily, her diagnosis, the cancer, wasn't long. It wasn't a decade, or it wasn't that suffering. It was really, she was so sharp, her mentality and heart, everything was good. And then all of a sudden when that pancreatic cancer diagnosis came, it was, unfortunately just a matter of months.
Yeah, yeah. My dad actually had pancreatic cancer, so I'm very familiar with how fast that one moves. It's really, really quick, and really painful. But yeah, yeah. So this kind of, now, you're several generations down, still had an effect on you. Can you talk about how what they did has affected your financial life, or at least how it affected your life while you were kind of in their care?
Yeah, I've always grown up really like money conscious, right? Or fiscally conservative, not only having, nothing at times, but then also again having her focus and her, desire to do better and to leave that legacy piece. And my other grandmother, actually, so it was my dad's mother-in-law. So my other grandmother, she taught school for 33 years. So she actually had a pension. She was widowed for about 18, 16, 18 years, things like that, financially fine, that mentality of having a credit card but paying it off every month, right? And so she'd be like, hey, Kim, go ahead, or Kimberly, go ahead and buy whatever you wanted from Penny's. But then again, you never heard anything about like $8,000 worth of debt, because that Penny's bill was always paid off immediately. And so yeah, I always kind of, I've had that Excel budget, right? I geek out again with numbers. My background's actually all health and wellness. And so that mentality of data analysis and just over time, seeing that correlation of health and wealth. And that's again, or not again, but we haven't spoken about that, but that's the focus for me, and the drive is that health and wealth correlation, simply meaning, whether you look at maternal health, comorbidities, end of life, et cetera, the health and wealth correlation, it's almost down every data point you look at. So simply meaning the more zeros we have in our account, the healthier that outcome will be for that individual. And that's kind of ridiculous, and it really shouldn't be that way. And so, for the last few years, that's why I've been focused on this financial literacy piece, not only starting with, the upbringing, my core values and what have you, and fiscally conservative, and, having, again, I think we'd spoken about my first car, my first purchase. I was in college, right? So nothing was handed to me. I put myself through 2 degrees, luckily scholarships, right? But also loans, also work study. I've been working, since I was 15. And my first car, a little Nissan Maxima, I love that little car. I bought that from my grandparents. Granny and Papa had CDs, right? Back in the day, CDs were like 7%, 8%, what have you. It was amazing. Now it's a farce. But cashed in a CD for $5K. I bought my first used car. I think I was a sophomore in college. It wasn't even like a freshman, but I'd have to confirm that. Paid back every dime. And then I also offered to pay back, interest on that. So, just however many months or whatever it took, I'm not sure. But say it took me 2 years to pay that back. That was a CD that they cashed out. So they took a hit, a penalty, right? Because it was, I don't think it was
Right.
up, time wise, whatever length of time they had. And then, made sure that it wasn't just like, oh, Kim's getting a new car, versus my, cousins were like, what's this chick doing? We didn't get a new car. So new to me, obviously used, because you can't buy a Maxima for $5K. But so yeah, it's kind of stay with me. And again, that's why I'm so passionate, because I always want to make sure people have those financial literacy concepts. The rule of 72, for example, affects us daily from a debt perspective, but also as an amazing compound interest perspective. And it supposedly dates back to Einstein, and he talks about compound interest being the 8th wonder of the world, what have you. And so that passion of mine, and making sure that we're all, as we said, as you mentioned, I'm teaching what's not taught in school.
Right.
So that's what drives me essentially.
Yeah, yeah. And I love the rule of 72. So I'm gonna have to explain it real quick, because you and I teach a lot of the same things. And I feel like we can't say rule of 72 and then just make people Google it. So essentially it's figuring out how long it will take for your money to double. So if you take your interest rate and look at just the number, forget all the decimals or percentages or whatever, and you take 72 and divide by that interest rate, then you know how many years it will take for your money to double, approximately. So if you have an interest rate of 1%, So 72 divided by 1 is
72 years.
72 years to double. Exactly.
Woo! I don't
How
know.
many 72-year periods in your lifetime are you planning on having?
And then, yeah, are we vampires? It's daylight where we're both at. So I'm not going to be in 72 years. That 20K I've got sitting in the bank, to become 40, I won't be around, right?
Right.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of rough. But if you get up to say 7%, that's roughly 70 divided by 10, or 70 divided by 7 is 10. So you could assume roughly you would double every 10 years. So, 7% is going to be a whole lot better than 1%. So that's that concept. Talk to me a little bit about GoFundMe.
Yeah, so I like to use a lot of the like marketing and hashtags, if you will, right? Because they're so catchy. But GoFundMe not, and then GoFund yourself, and that one could be a little, but GoFundMe not probably is what I use most often. GoFundMe, I'm sure a brilliant. I've not had to personally put out, and create a fundraiser, but brilliant concept. I wholeheartely agree. When your home burns down, right, or catastrophe, or in my local community, there was an apartment fire, and like five families have been displaced, animals and what have you. And so that makes complete sense. Now, you can also do breast augmentation, and I want to go on a honeymoon, and those things don't make really sense to me, but to each their own. But from a funeral perspective and a final expense perspective, I had did a post. It's been a few weeks now. I'm on Canva, like all of us are on Canva. Shout out, amazing products. And as we're in Germany, we're zooming in from Germany today because of the product Canva. But yeah, so I had created it, and then I wanted to be, again, more literal. So it was 3 days out. So I'm like, oh, before I post on LinkedIn, let me go ahead and go to GoFundMe, just to look at the total. GoFundMe, you can filter, your city, your location, what have you. I just did a nationwide. I only looked up 2 terms from a final expense, a funeral. You can look up memorial, you can look up burial, celebratory. I looked up literal memorial and then funeral, those 2 terms. And when I created the Canva image, it was approximately 700 GoFundMe's, fundraisers. That 3 days later, it had turned into almost 780. 3 days. Again, I didn't change in the filters, 2 terms. 780 within our country. Now, I don't know these people, right? I can only imagine, but in my mind, excuse me, cat hair. In my mind, they didn't have that final expense in place. They don't have a burial policy. They don't have, that generational wealth from that life perspective. And so their family members, their community, their church members, whomever, put this out to, assist with that individual, to get some, their final wishes, what they had wanted, some peace of mind, what have you. But 780,000 within our country. You and I both know, I have options. I can, put someone in a policy for what they're, less than what they're spending monthly on coffee, right? And so having that availability, whether that's, more of a strict final expense option, I've, 5K coverage all the way to 50K coverage, or a life policy, right? And so just going back to my grandmother, she was able to get, secure a very expensive, again, based on her age, right? Because over the years, I didn't say this, she had policies in place, but financially struggled. And as we both know, when we meet with clients, that's usually one of the first things they do. They cancel that life insurance. I'd rather have $200 going to Cox Cable or Comcast, right? Because I love TV, I binge, whatever. Yeah, then go into a life policy. And so she did, cancel that over time. I get that. Same with my parents. And then, once she was able to get something in place, again, it didn't leave a legacy, right? There was no money that came for us. Almost the entire policy went to transporting her body and putting together. Even though she had paid and had a mausoleum for her and my grandfather, there's still cost involved for the church. There's still cost. Every time you open it, it's X money. The engraving is X money, to bring in the priest, to bring in the harpist, anyway, it ends up being like one intimate service of like 3 hours is thousands and thousands of dollars. Within Tennessee, because this is where I do most of the work. So this would have been back in Louisiana, but we say on average a funeral is going to be anywhere from 8 to 15,000. So typically about 12. Now, obviously, it can be more affordable, more expensive, different counties. And then a cremation is much more affordable at that point. But yeah, just going back to that GoFundMe, almost 800,000, at that time period, only looking at 2 terms, the need in our community.
That just blows me away at, 780,000 people inside the US looking for assistance with a memorial service or a burial.
Mm-hmm.
And not having those insurance policies because they go through that process just like your family did, which must really bother you to no end, being that this is your business, right? They had the policy and they canceled it because they didn't remember the future value. They didn't remember why they put it in place in the first place and think, you know what, I can probably cancel something else before I cancel this, or even just call their agent and be like, can I back this down? Can I keep half of it, or something along those lines? Because a lot of people don't even know you can do that. Like, you can call your agent and ask for help, and they might be able to tweak something for you, but not make you lose all your coverage. So yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
and depending on the policy,
since we're talking about insurance, let's talk a little bit about some of the other power other than just final expenses. What other awesome stuff can we do with life insurance? Because I just think I nerd out on this, and I'm sure not everybody does, but it's a really cool financial wealth building tool that most people don't recognize. So tell me, just quick version, other cool stuff we can do with life insurance.
Yeah, so absolutely. So when you think about building that generational wealth, right, going back to the original topic, we think of home ownership, right, rental properties, what have you. I'm working with a client. He's an attorney. He's got about 23 rentals plus their own home, right? He's going to step away from corporate America, the law, his own law practice, about 55 because he's built up that income, right? That's amazing. The other opportunity is life insurance. So from a financial perspective, again, locking in something could be completely affordable. There's options that you and I know. You could do a 10-year, literally pay for 10 years, walk away from the premium, the monthly payment. It can still increase over time, meaning your death benefit can increase. It can build cash value. I mean, there's just different options, and that's what's so amazing, to be able to present options to clients. My favorite product is, without getting too much detail, it's a 4-in-1 type of opportunity. So it offers that death benefit to the beneficiaries, right? Not for Kimberly, not for Camille, our family, our kids, whomever, great grandkids, etc. There's building up cash value. So over time, I can tap into that. Do I need, when I retire, do I need additional income? Absolutely. Here's $2K a month. Here's $5K a month. That's awesome. It's not actually reported to the IRS because it's already been taxed. And it's all within the tax parameters. It's called tax code 7702. The third thing, living benefits. So the benefit for us to actually tap into, I usually say, and you probably do too, life insurance, you don't have to die to use, right?
Right.
Cardiac issues, stroke, cancer, depending on the carrier, 15 to 20 different categories or illnesses, if you will, that you can tap into and qualify. Hey, here's a death benefit of 500,000. I have a $500,000, but I need 50K. Awesome. That just means the beneficiaries, my godson, is going to get 450K, right? When that pass. And then finally, so we'd say cash value, death benefit.
You had 4 because you already put in tax free.
Yeah, so the tax
free. That was your 4th one. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, the long-term care. No, the
sure.
Sorry. I was like, wait, what did I already talk about?
But no, there's 5.
Yeah, I'm so passionate. So the long-term care piece, obviously a 20-something-year-old is not worried about that, and that's not going to be the conversation. People, myself, in our 40s, 50s, what have you, 60s, that conversation becomes, hey, let's look at long-term care. Within the US, the average is about $6K a month today and about 30 months. So I always make sure when I'm writing a policy, I'm being mindful of inflation, looking at their age, et cetera, but making sure we can surpass the 30 months and surpass, if possible, depending on their financial situation, the 6K a month. I networked recently with someone, her mother's at 14K, she's up in Maine, and I'm like blown away. I was like, wow. So 14,000 a month. So yeah, the opportunities in some regards can be endless, and it's all within that parameter of life insurance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which most people only think about that very first thing, which is the death benefit, and have no idea about any of the rest of it. So I'm so glad that we're sharing this information, because I feel like it's a secret that really shouldn't be a secret. Like this should not be secret information. Everybody should know. Everybody should know. And if you don't know, just go ask your agent. Go ask your agent, and then they can help you figure out what the right policy is for you, for where you're at, for what your liabilities are, for who you want to leave money to. And just imagine, somebody passes away, even if it's, when they're old and gray, and then they leave that $500,000 to their family. What could your family do in 2 generations if you received $500,000 from every person who passed away? Probably be pretty amazing.
And $500,000, that's on the low end, honestly. I mean, I'm talking to people, it's millions, right? They can step away from work, literally start taking that tax-free cash that we talked about, monthly income, have the living benefits, and then because it's grown over time and because they've paid in, say, 15 years, or because they're older, what have you, it could be potentially millions.
Yeah.
So,
it can be millions. It absolutely can. I'm going on the conservative side of what if it's just a little bit? What if it's just $500,000? And would that change lives? Would that change your life? Would that change your kid's life or your grandkids' life if they receive that? It might.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So cool. Tell me something about you, something cool that people might not know about you.
I'm definitely not cool, but we're wearing the German. We're wearing the German look, and we're in Germany today. As I mentioned, we're zooming in because I've been called a few times a craft beer snob, right? So I love good beer. German and Belgian are 2 of my favorites. Give me a good Hefeweizen. Oh my God, a Saison. So you'll find me. I volunteer. I love volunteering. Now, giving back to my community, definitely, absolutely. I'm all about service to others. But I also volunteer at Beer Fest because why? I get in for free, right? Thinking about that fiscally conservative mindset I do have.
Right. Yep.
And then I'm serving, I get to partake, maybe not partake till after, and then have a good time, right? And so I love that. I do have on my list, if you will, I hate using the term bucket list. I think it's ridiculous, but my list, I've been fortunate and blessed, beyond grateful. I've been, I think it's 12 countries now. I'm getting ready to head to Hawaii at the end of the month. Obviously, that's not a new country, that's the US, but I'm just thinking about my travel.
New travel place, yeah.
Yeah, I do have, Oktoberfest, which is technically September, on my list. So yeah, a craft beer connoisseur. It's all about, balancing again that money. Do I want to buy a ticket for $100, or can I just volunteer for a few hours? Absolutely. Sign me up.
Sign you up, have a good time, get to hang out with some cool people, and get all the benefits of the ticket. I think you just made a case for everybody to start volunteering now.
Like the hat. Yeah, I get more compliments on this hat. Never purchased it. I'm not even sure if I served for bucks. It just, that distillery or that beer distributor, excuse me, just, hey, you look great in the hat. Here's a hat. Absolutely.
Here's a hat. Yeah, that's cool. And now you've done exactly what they wanted you to do, which is to wear it so everyone can see you. So it's perfect. It's perfect. Thank you.
Good marketing.
Yeah. Good marketing. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you sharing with us and sharing your story and talking about this super important topic of, how we can really build generational wealth and leave those legacies instead of the liabilities. So
right. Don't be like my family. Yeah. So put something in place. No disrespect to my family. I still joke with my dad to this day about this topic. But yeah, connect with your agent, a professional, one of us, whomever, and discuss some different options. But I'm so beyond grateful that you've had me on today, and so glad we connected.
Yeah, me too. It's been a pleasure. If you want to get in touch with Kimberly, you can visit her Linktree. So you're going to go to that, Linktree /K Tromatore. It's KTROMATORE. Thank you as well to all of our listeners and viewers. I'm your host, Camille Diaz. I'm a business optimization coach, financial educator, author, and speaker. You can contact me and find out what I'm up to through my website, CamilleDiaz.com, and follow me on social media at Cam Unfiltered. Be sure to follow MoneyHeart at MoneyHeart Show, and our website is MoneyHeartShow.com. So the money mantra that Kimberly sent me was something that I think is kind of cool. If you were just, thinking about this every day and thinking, I'm excited by other people receiving money, and I intend financial freedom. So I think that's kind of neat, being excited about money for everyone. So thank you, Kimberly. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just about me, right? That narcissism mindset is completely opposite for me. So.
Exactly. The volunteering and the helping everybody is perfect. Thanks so much.
Thank you.